Hey guys, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I've got another watch review for you guys. And the watch that I'm going to be reviewing is going to be this one here, of course, and it's going to be the Casio MTD-1050. And this is an absolute bargain of a dive watch. And I actually ordered this thing off of eBay, and I kind of took a risk because there's not a lot of information on this particular watch. I did a lot of research before I actually purchased it, and I just really couldn't find anything. Even as you know, the dimensions and specs of this watch, there was nothing I could find. But I sure was surprised and pleased when this thing arrived. And when I opened that package and I first saw this thing, I was like, wow, did I discover a gem? And what a bargain. So let me quickly go over those specs. With this watch here, you're going to have a 41 millimeter case size, which for me, that's probably my favorite case size. So that was just a home run right there to begin with. I didn't know what size this thing was because, you know, for example, the Casio Duro, which is another Casio dive watch, I believe is 44 or 45 millimeter case size, which would have been too big for me. So I was really happy that this thing was at 41 millimeter case size. It has a 20 millimeter lug width, so you can see I got it on a gray NATO here, which matches that beautiful that stainless steel finish as well as the beautiful silver dial. So that's a good lug width. I prefer 20 or 22, so that was good for me as well. And then the lug to lug is not too bad either. Some of your dive watches can have 50 millimeter lug, and this is too, in my opinion, too long. So this one here comes just under 48 millimeter. So that was also a win. So overall, I was very, very impressed with some of these specs. Another thing that was really good about this is the thickness. So you're looking at only 11 millimeters on your thickness with the mineral crystal there. So that's also very thin. That's a thin case size, and the reason they're able to do that because this is obviously a quartz watch. And then also your dimension with the crown, which this is a kind of a small crown here, but that dimension from your case size, including crown, you're looking at 45 millimeters. So to me, this is really a perfect size. So I was really, really, really pleased. You can probably hear that in my voice with how this thing turned out spec-wise. I mentioned the crystal here. It is a mineral crystal. As far as I can tell, it is scratch resistant. There's really no scratches on this thing. I don't even know how old this watch is when this thing was manufactured, but it does come with a mineral crystal. Let me bring it in a little closer for you guys so you can see that wonderful dial. It also features a screw-down crown, a true screw-down crown, and a case back too is also screw-down. So this is a dive watch, and the rating on this thing you can see right there on the dial is 200 meter, which that is. I was really pleased, getting that kind of specs with this watch. Now, let me talk about some of the positives that with this watch, in my opinion. First off, I'll just mention how amazing of a deal this thing is. This particular watch I purchased on eBay, like I mentioned, and I paid $20 ship for this thing, and I could not be happier with that. This watch seems like it would be at least a $60 or $70 watch, and I don't know what this particular watch sold for originally, but the quality is there. So if you're able to see a watch that looks like this on eBay, it's Casio, it's going to be a quartz, it's going to have 10-year battery life written on the dial, as well as the 200 meter water resistance. If you see one of these, man, I definitely recommend you jump on it if it's a good price. Another positive with this is, as a quartz, some quartz watches are, when they tick through, it's very loud and annoying ticking. This one is absolutely dead silent. I mean, I don't know how they did that. I don't know if it's just how thick the case is and how thick the mineral crystal is, but it is absolutely dead silent. I can't even hear any ticking at all. So that was a huge bonus. I mentioned this dial, that nice silver dial, and that again, is another huge positive for me. This is my first watch that has a silver face like this, so I was pretty pumped about that. And then just that nice sunburst on there. That's pretty impressive. I do like also that it has a date complication. Most quartz watches are going to have, complications on them because it's easier to do that with a quartz. But I was just happy that it did have a quartz and that there's also no magnifier on it. I don't really like magnifiers on my watches, so I was happy that it didn't have that on there. Another positive is the thickness. Like I mentioned, it's only 11 millimeters, so this is, it doesn't stick out like some of your dive watches, or that might be 16, 17 millimeters thick, and it just, to me, it just doesn't look that good. I like my watches, particularly my dive watches, from about 10 millimeter up to about 15 or 16 at the very max. That's just what I prefer. So being 11 millimeter, it's on the thin side, and that's a positive in my opinion. Of course, you do have you have the 200 meter water resistant rating with this watch, which is great. So this is a dive watch. You could go snorkeling with this. You could take it to the pool. You don't have to worry about water getting into this watch. Now, I will mention I haven't actually opened this case back up. I will eventually, and I'll probably just lubricate the gaskets and seals on there, and possibly the crown if I can get it out, just to keep those seals from drying out. Again, I don't know how old this watch is. It may be 10, it may be 15 years old, and I just don't know on that. And the last thing I'll mention that's a huge positive with this particular model is it has a 10-year battery life. And I don't know if this is the original battery. Again, I've only owned this watch for 7 days now, but you can see right there on the dial, if I can get my camera to focus, there we go. It says right there, 10-year battery. So that's impressive out of a quartz watch. Usually, for instance, I have a Phoebus watch. That's a 300 meter dive watch. It's an excellent watch, but that one is rated at 3 years for the battery. So again, I don't know how they were able to get that type of battery life out of this particular model, but it's impressive. So I probably, like when I lubricate those seals, when I open up that case back, I will probably go ahead and just swap out and put a new battery in there as well, just so I know that my battery will be good for another 10 years. Cons, there's really not a lot with this, particularly for the price that I paid. But what I want to mention is the bezel. So that is probably the biggest negative with this watch. The bezel does function. It works just fine. Everything lines up. However, first off, it's very difficult to grip. You can see the bezel is very thin and it's sloped down, and it's very slick. There's no coin edging or any other type of edging around here besides these little machined in sections here and there to grip onto. So gripping this thing with 2 fingers is actually very difficult to rotate this thing. Really, I found the best is to use the whole edge of a thumb here and then mount, and then also this finger, and kind of just grab it like this and just force it. It's a little easier on the wrist than, off the wrist like it is now. But that is probably the biggest negative with this watch. I wish the bezel was easier to actuate. Another thing too, it's not really a huge negative, but it's just a personal preference. This particular watch the bezel has 60 clicks instead of the normal 120. So it's just not as precise. I mean, it functions just the same. It's not like going to affect you on performance if you need to time something really. But it's not as satisfying. So, when they click, I don't know if you can hear that or not. Yeah, it has a decent click. It also has a little bit of back play, you see. Let me see if I can hold the watch a little more steady so you can see. You can see a little bit of back play. So, it's not a very quality or satisfying bezel. That's definitely a negative. I don't really use bezels too often, but it's just something that, people that wear a lot of dive watches are used to to using and enjoying. So that's the biggest negative with this thing. The other stuff is kind of, nitpicking here, but I do think the crown is a little small, so it's just kind of hard to unscrew. Again, it's not really a deal breaker at all because this is a quartz watch, and quartz watches are so accurate that you're really not going to be adjusting the time very often. So, but it is as sort of a small crown and, relative to the rest of the case body here, in my opinion. And then another thing I'll mention just on a con here is you can see as the hand is ticking around, just like most quartz watches, particularly in this price point, the seconds hand is not going to line up with your markings, your 60-second markings that are on the dial. And that's kind of normal on most quartz watches. Again, it's very difficult to actually line that up just on the nature of how quartz is designed. But this one, some places during the sweep around, it's closer, and some places it's off. And again, that's normal, but I did want to mention that this particular model, the seconds hand does not line up, perfectly. I don't really care because I'm not worried about that, but I just wanted to mention that. Another thing too, I forgot to mention in the positives, and I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, its timekeeping is actually pretty good. It's not excellent. I have other quartz watches that do better. This one looks like it's going to come in at around plus 12 to plus 15 seconds per month, where I have other quartz watches that are closer between 1 and 5 seconds a month. So that's not bad. I mean, if a watch is only off 15 seconds in a month, that's still excellent. But I will mention that this particular watch right now is not as accurate as some of my other quartz watches. So I'll mention that. Now, what it could be is that this battery is maybe getting a little low, and maybe when I put a new battery in this thing that I'm going to get better accuracy of that timekeeping. But for now, as of right now, and I'll make a note if the accuracy improves. But right now, like I said, I'm averaging between, it looks like 12 and 15 seconds a month, and that's just calculating it over. I've had it only for a week now, and I just multiplied it by the weeks, how many seconds it's gained for this week, and came out to between 12 and 15 seconds. But overall, I am just truly happy with this watch. It is excellent. I don't think see myself selling this thing. I like how it has a very classy look to it. It has good weight to it. I mean, it feels like a quality timepiece. Like I mentioned before, if I didn't know, I don't know what these things sold for originally, but it feels like $100 quartz watch. It really does. The quality is there. I'll quickly take this NATO strap off too, so we can kind of look at the back here. That way you can see some other markings. If my camera will focus, it's always hard to, there we go. So you can see there's your movement number, 2719, your model number, MTD-1050. Of course, stainless steel. The whole thing is stainless steel. And you'll see water resistant 20 bar, which is 200 meters, which matches up with on the dial here where it says 200 meter water resistant there. And then I noticed here it says cased in China. So it was, I guess, put together in China, or maybe the case was made in China. I'm not sure on that. I'm sure it was. Pretty much all the Casios are made in China nowadays. But what a beautiful watch. I mean, look at this thing, that silver sunburst dial. Let me see if I can get some of the fingerprints off of it so we get a full view of it. Really pretty watch. I definitely recommend it. So if you guys see this online and it's a good price, buy it. Highly recommend it for me. 2 thumbs up here from Harder Texas Armory. Really impressed with it. And like I mentioned before, this is a keeper. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, give me a like and a thumbs up. Share this video if you want, or subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. But once again, this is Neil at Heart of Texas Armory signing off. Y'all take care.